So, Mandate for Leadership, the conservative promise. It's not 1980, it's 2023. The game has changed. The long march of cultural Marxism through our institutions has come to pass. The federal government is a behemoth weaponized against American citizens and conservative values, with freedom and liberty under siege as never before. The task at hand to reverse this tide and restore our republic to its original moorings is too great for any one conservative policy shop to spearhead. It requires the collective action of our movement. With the quickening approach of January 2025, we have 2 years and one chance to get it right. Project 2025 is more than 50 and growing of the nation's leading conservative organizations joining forces to prepare and seize the day. The axiom goes personnel is policy, and we need a new generation of Americans to answer the call and come to serve. This book is functionally an invitation for you, the reader, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, and Ms. Smith, to come to Washington or support those who can. Our goal is to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one to deconstruct the administrative state. The project is built on 4 pillars. Pillar one, this volume puts in place a consensus view of how major federal agencies must be governed, and where disagreement exists, brackets out these differences for the next president to choose the path. Pillar two is a personal database that allows candidates to build their own professional profiles and our coalition members to review and voice their recommendations. These recommendations will then be collated and shared with the president-elect's team, greatly streamlining the appointment process. Pillar three is the Presidential Administrative Academy, an online educational system taught by experts from our coalition. For the newcomer, this will explain how the government functions and how to function in government. For the experience, we will host in-person seminars with advanced training and set the bar for what is expected of senior leadership. In Pillar 4, the playbook, we are forming agency teams and drafting transition plans to move out upon the president's utterance of, "So help me God." As Americans living at the approach of our nation's 250th birthday, we have been given much. As conservatives, we are as much required to steward this precious heritage for the next generation. On behalf of our coalition partners, we thank you and invite you to come join with us at project2025.org. Paul Dans, Direct Project 2025. A report just came out today on one of the authors, I'm not sure which one, but that he had allegedly harmed a dog a couple years ago. A neighbor's dog was barking, and he allegedly beat it with a shovel. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll find out the name for you. Authors. Darren Baxt is Deputy Director, Center for Energy and Environment, and Senior Fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, CEI. Before joining CEI, Darren was a Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, where he played a leading role in the launch of the organization's New Energy and Environmental Center. For a decade, he led Heritage food and agricultural policy work, and he edited and co-authored Heritage's book, Farms and Free Enterprise. He has testified numerous times before Congress, has appeared frequently on media outlets, and has played leadership roles in such organizations such as the Federalist Society, American Agricultural Law Association, and Food and Drug Law Institute, serving on the Food and Drug Law Journal's editorial advisory board. Jonathan Berry is a managing partner at Boyden Gray and Associates PLLC. He served as acting assistant secretary for policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, overseeing all aspects of rulemaking and policy development. At the U.S. Department of Justice, he assisted with the development of regulatory policy and with the nominations of Justice Neil Gorsuch and dozens of other judges. He previously served as chief counsel for the Trump transition and earlier clerked for Associate Justice Samuel Alito and Judge Jerry Smith of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. He's a graduate of Yale College and Columbia University School of Law. Lindsay M. Burke is director of the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Burke served on Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin's transition steering committee and landing team for education. She serves on the board of visitors for George Mason University, the board of the Education Freedom Institute, and the advisory board of the Independent Women's Forum Education Freedom Center. Dr. Burke's research has been published in such journals as Social Science Quarterly, Educational Research and Evaluation, and Research in Educational Administration and Leadership. She holds a BA from Hollins University, an MA from the University of Virginia, and a PhD from George Mason University. David R. Burton is Senior Fellow in Economic Policy in the Thomas A. Rowe Institute for Economic Policy Studies at the Heritage Foundation. He focuses on securities regulation, tax policy, business law, entrepreneurship, administrative law, financial privacy, the U.S. Department of Commerce, corporate welfare, international investment, international information sharing, the U.S. economic relationship with China, and climate-related financial risk. Previously, Burton was general counsel at the National Small Business Association, a partner in the Argus Group, vice president, finance, and general counsel for New England Machinery, and manager of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Tax Policy Center. He holds a JD from the University of Maryland School of Law and a BA in economics from the University of Chicago. Adam I'm gonna mess up that name, so you can see it. As a professor of law at Michigan State University, his scholarly research focuses on telecommunication, antitrust, and internet issues. He served as acting assistant secretary of commerce and deputy associate attorney general at the Justice Department during the Trump administration. He received his BA magna cum laude from Yale University and his JD Magnum cum laude from the University of Pennsylvania Law School. Dustin J. Carmack is Research Fellow for Cybersecurity, Intelligence, and Emerging Technologies in the Border Security and Immigration Center at the Heritage Foundation. Previously, he served in the intelligence community as Chief of Staff to the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. In Congress, he served as Chief of Staff to Congressman John Ratcliffe, TX04, and Congressman Ron DeSantis, FL06. Mr. Carmack studied at Truman State University in Missouri and Tel Aviv University in Israel. Brendan Carr has nearly 20 years of private sector and public sector experience in communications and tech policy. He currently serves as the senior Republican on the Federal Communications Commission. Prior to this role, Carr served as the Federal Communication Commission's general counsel. Earlier, he worked as an attorney at Wiley Rain LLP. Previously, he clerked on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. After graduating from Georgetown University, he earned his J.D. magna cum laude from the Catholic University of America's Columbus School of Law, where he served as an editor of the Catholic University Law Review. Benjamin S. Carson, Sr., MD, is founder and chairman of the American Cornerstone Institute and previously served as the 17th Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Born in Detroit to a single mother with a third-grade education, Dr. Carson was raised to love reading and education. He attended Yale and earned his MD from the University of Michigan Medical School. For nearly 30 years, Dr. Carson served as director of pediatric neurosurgery at the Johns Hopkins Children's Center, where he performed the first separation of twins conjoined at the back of the head. Cool. Ken Cuccinelli served as acting director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services in 2019, and then from November 2019 through the end of the Trump administration as acting deputy secretary for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. During his tenure as acting deputy secretary, Ken also served as the chief regulatory officer from the Department of Homeland Security. He also has served the Commonwealth of Virginia, first as the state senator and then as Virginia's 46th attorney general. Rick Dearborn served as deputy chief of staff for President Donald Trump and was responsible for the day-to-day operations of 5 separate departments of the executive office of the president. He also served as executive director of the 2016 President-elect Donald Trump transition team. Before that, Rick served in several roles, including as chief of staff in the office of then U.S. Senator Jeff Sessions, Republican for Alabama, for nearly 2 decades. Between his 2 tours in Senator Sessions' office, he was appointed by President George W. Bush as Assistant Secretary of Energy for Congressional Affairs. Earlier in his career, Rick worked for the National Republican Senatorial Committee, the Senate Republican Conference, and the Senate Steering Committee. He graduated from the University of Oklahoma with a BA in Public Administration and a minor in Economics. I don't know why that was a tongue twister for me, but it was. Veronique de Rugy is the George Gibbs Chair in Political Economy and Senior Research Fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University and a nationally syndicated columnist. Her primary research interests include the U.S. economy, the federal budget, taxation, tax competition, and cronyism. DeRuggie is the author of a weekly opinion column for the Creators Syndicate, writes regular columns for Reason Magazine, and blogs about economics at National Review Online's The Corner. She received her MA in economics from the Paris Dauphine University and her PhD in economics from the Pantheon Sorbonne University. Donald Devine is a senior scholar at the Fund for America Studies in Washington, D.C. He was President Ronald Reagan's first term Office of Personal Management Director when the Washington Post labeled him Reagan's terrible swift sword of the civil service for cutting bureaucracy and reducing spending by billions of dollars. He was a professor at the University of Maryland and Bellevue University and is a columnist and author of 10 books, including his recent Enduring Tension. Diana Furgot Roth, an Oxford educated economist, directs the Center for Energy, Climate, and Environment at the Heritage Foundation and is adjunct professor of economics at George Washington University. Diana served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology at the U.S. Department of Transportation, where she directed the department's $1.2 billion research budget. The Office of Positioning, the Office of Positioning, Navigation and Timing and Spectrum Management, and the University Transportation Center program. Diana worked in senior roles in the White House under Presidents Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush, where she was Chief of Staff of the Council of Economics Advisors. Thomas F. Gilman. He served as Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Administration and Chief Financial Officer of the U.S. Department of Commerce in the Trump administration. Currently, he's a director of ACLJ Action and chairman of Target Metals. Tom is the former CEO of Chrysler Financial and has had a 40-plus year career as a senior executive and entrepreneur in the global automotive industry, including roles at Chrysler Corporation, Cerberus Capital Management, Asbury Automotive Group, TD Auto Financial, and Automotive Capital Services. He holds a BS in finance from Villanova University. Mandy M. Gonasekera of Oxford, Mississippi, is a principal at Section V11 Strategies, a senior policy analyst at the Independent Women's Forum, and visiting fellow in the Center for Energy, Climate, and Environment at the Heritage Foundation. During the Trump administration, Mandy served as the Chief of Staff at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, as well as Principal Deputy Assistant Administrator for the Office of Air and Radiation. She previously served in numerous roles at the House of Representatives and U.S. Senate, including as Majority Counsel for the Senate Environment, the Public Works Committee under Chairman Jim Inhofe. She received her BA from Mississippi College and her JD from the University of Mississippi School of Law. Jean Hamilton is Vice President and General Counsel of America First Legal Foundation. Jean served as counselor to the Attorney General at the U.S. Department of Justice, Senior Counselor to the Secretary of Homeland Security, General Counsel on the Senate Committee of the Judiciary, Assistant Chief Counsel at U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and as Attorney Advisor in the Secretary's Honors Program for Attorneys at the Department of Homeland Security. Jean graduated from the Washington and Lee University School of Law, magna cum laude, and Order of the Coif, and has a BA in International Affairs from the University of Georgia. Jennifer Hazelton has worked as a senior strategic consultant for the Department of Defense and Industrial Base Policy and has held senior positions at USAID, the Export-Import Bank of the United States, and the State Department. She was also a communications director in the U.S. Congress and worked as an award-winning journalist for CNN and Fox News Channel. Hazelton holds an MB in Business Administration from Emory University and earned her BA from the University of Georgia. Karen Kerrigan is president and CEO of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council and has helped to strengthen U.S. entrepreneurship and global business growth for 28 years. She's provided counsel across the globe via training missions focused on entrepreneurial development, effective advocacy, policy formation, and implementation. Karen testifies regularly before Congress and has served on numerous federal advisory boards representing the interests of entrepreneurs and small business. Dennis Dean Kirk is Associate Director for Personal Policy with the 2025 Presidential Transition Project at the Heritage Foundation. Born and raised in Kansas, he graduated with honors from Northern Arizona University and Washington University Law School. Dennis has over 45 years of experience in private law and public federal government counsel services. He served in President George Bush's administration in the U.S. Army's Office of General Counsel and later as Associate General Counsel for Strategic Integration and Business Transformation, where he was recognized with the Exceptional Civilian and Meritorious Civilian Service Awards and other awards. During the Trump administration, Dennis served in senior positions at the Office of Personnel Management and was nominated by President Trump to be chairman of the Merit Systems Protection Board. Kent Lastman is president and CEO of the Competitive Enterprise Institute, educated at the Catholic University of America and North Carolina State University. He has written on telecommunications, privacy, environmental, antitrust, and consumer protection regulation, as well as trade policy and the design of regulatory systems. Kent's policy, research, and advocacy have taken him to 45 state capitals, more than a dozen countries, and deep into the heart of the federal regulatory state. Bernard L. McNamee is an energy and regulatory attorney with a major law firm and was formerly a member of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. He is also the Street Distinguished Visiting Professor of Law at the Appalachian School of Law. In addition to serving as a Federal Energy Regulatory Commissioner, McNamee has served in various senior policy and legal positions throughout his career, including at the U.S. Department of Energy for U.S. Senator Ted Cruz and Virginia Governor George Allen. McNamee also served 4 attorneys general in 2 states, Virginia and Texas. Whew, it goes on. Christopher Miller served in several positions during the Trump administration, including as acting U.S. Secretary of Defense, Director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Combating Terrorism, the Senior Director for Counterterrorism and Transnational Threats at the National Security Council. Before his civilian service in the Department of Defense, Miller was an Army Green Beret in the 5th Special Forces Group with multiple combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Achieving the rank of colonel, Miller earned a BA from George Washington University and an MA from the Naval War College. He also graduated from the College of Naval Command and Staff and the Army War College.